believe it's recording. Good morning. How y'all doing this morning?
Good morning.
This is the last one we're gonna study about Joseph today. That's about when he met his brothers in Egypt. We met them in Egypt. And the purpose of the lesson is to understand that we receive grace in order to give grace. And that's one time I think the purpose actually goes along with the lesson, but sometimes it doesn't seem like it makes no sense. But anyway, to get clear on where we're at, Joseph, of course, is been made some kind of minister in Egypt by Pharaoh to administer the food supplies during this famine. You know, this famine was all over the Middle East everywhere, and it's a lot more to this story than what's in this script, the passage that we're studying for the lesson. And we know when food got real short, where Joseph's brothers and his father were, his daddy told him, news got around that Egypt had plenty of food and they would sell it to you. So he sent them to get food, and so they went a couple times, and Joseph recognized them, but they didn't recognize him when they came to Egypt. And so he played a couple tricks on them, and eventually, when our lesson here starts, he reveals to them who he is, and so he's forgiven them, and I don't think they ever had any conscience about what they had done to him. I think they just went on with their lives and sort of forgot about it, figured he was gone forever. And so they were pretty shocked to realize who this is that they got to go beg food from. And so they were scared that, you know, since he was powerful, he would have them all put in prison or killed or whatever. So they were terrified. But, you know, Joseph just wept. He was so happy to see him and to get news that his father was still alive, and other than the famine, everything was going all right. So he tells them all that, and he said, I'm not mad. He said, what y'all did is in the past. And I want us all back as a family. I want to see my father again. So he gave them food they needed to carry back, but he told them, go get everybody and bring them here to Egypt. And said y'all can live in the land of Goshen, and I don't know exactly where that is, but it's somewhere in Egypt, in the Nile Delta area, which was the Nile Delta was and still is one of the most fertile places on earth. So they were going to be in a land of plenty, and of course that's how the Hebrews wound up in Egypt. And way on down the line, when they got another Pharaoh that was kind of mean and hard-headed, is when they started having trouble. And God, through Moses, ended up leading them out. But back to the story of Joseph and his brothers here. Well, Joseph believed, and he told his brothers, he said, God is what got me to where I am. He said, it's God's grace that allowed all this to happen so I could be in a position to help y'all and help other people. He said, and I see it like that. He said, I don't see it as I need to get revenge on y'all. And if it would have been me, I'd have hung a couple of his brothers just for principle of the thing. Maybe let the rest of them go, but I'd have hung a couple of them. But Joseph had forgiven completely, and in the books where our lesson is, they talk a lot about forgiving and moving on from somebody who has hurt you or done you wrong. And we've all had people who hurt us in one way or another, maybe more or less seriously. But I have learned myself through life that if you hold a grudge and stay mad at somebody for something that they did, you only hurt yourself. It's like you swallow a dose of poison and it just eats you away. If you can forgive it and move on and give grace to that person that hurt you, then you'll be better off. And it ain't gonna make no difference to them one way or the other, because if they care that much, they wouldn't hurt you to start with. But forgiving is about you being able to move on. And they talk a lot about that in the books that we have, the student book and the teacher book. That being able to move on after somebody has hurt you is important. And, Joseph felt that God had given him grace by always making his misfortunes turn out into something good later on. And Joseph believed that, and he lived that way. And he didn't believe that, well, God's helped me, so that's my good fortune, and I'm going to take advantage of it. He didn't do it that way. Joseph believed that God gave him grace, so he was able to give grace to others. You notice all the people who hurt Joseph during his life, he didn't look to take revenge on anybody. He simply looked to recover from that, and let's move on. Let's try to do the best we can where we have to be stuck. And that's what he did. And you got to admire Joseph, for that. The relationship was broken between him and his family. And Joseph was more interested, here's a chance to maybe restore that relationship. And they were able to do that. And in Don Rose's Sunday school supplement, it talks about restoring relationships. A broken relationship is a sad thing, and it damages both parties. And if you let that rule your thinking, rule your life, you're dragged down by it. It's like a weight around your neck that you got to drag everywhere. If you can just let go, forgive, extend the grace that God extends to us every day, if we can be generous enough to extend that grace to others, then we can restore relationships that may have been broken or damaged, and everybody's better off for it. Excuse me, kind of allergy or something got hold of it this morning. But Joseph chose to take the high road, as we love to say. He wanted this relationship back with his brothers and his father and his family, and that was more important to him than getting revenge for what his brothers did to him, because actually he wound up better off than he would have, because they'd all be starving back in Canaan. I believe that's where they were living. They'd all be back there starving had it not been for things worked around as they do. And they brought up an interesting point in one of the books, that there's a conflict here. If you look at it a certain way, it's kind of like when people get to arguing about the book of Job. Did God do all this bad stuff to Joseph just so he could wind up in Egypt? Seems like to me that's a complicated way to go about it, but a lot of people believe it that way. It's taught and preached that way, but I believe myself that God does not set out to hurt somebody. I think that when he sees something bad happen, he tries to make the best out of it. He tries to give us the opportunity to get over bad things that happen. I think he wants us to succeed. I don't think God wanted Joseph to be in that pit. I think, his brothers had the free choice whether to throw him in there or not. And that's what I tend to believe. That's kind of a more Wesleyan belief that God's not pulling puppet strings. If he was, then we wouldn't be guilty of nothing we did. And I have a hard time believing that. And a lot of people believe it that way. And that's not to say one's wrong and one's right, but it doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like a loving God who would do that to somebody. A loving God, why would he have put Job through all he put him through just because of a $5 bet he made with the devil? To me, that part of that story was always kind of stupid. It didn't make sense. And not to step on nobody's toes, we all believe things a little bit differently sometimes. But I don't believe the point of either of these stories was to say that God puts you through hard things and then pulls you back out the fire at the end. That seems like a complicated way to do things. If he had just wanted Joseph to be in Egypt, he could have just put him in Egypt. A whole lot simpler than going through all this. So I don't look at it that way. I look at it that God gave Joseph grace and the opportunity, chances to recover from all his misfortunes. And Joseph could either try to recover from them, pick himself up and keep trying, or he could lay down and pout about it and be mad at the world. And I think Joseph, and this is my personal belief again, but I think that Joseph decided he was going to just try to make the best of everything. He believed that God was on his side and would support him no matter what he went through. And by having that attitude, I think God was more eager to help Joseph than if he had just pouted and sat down and gave up. Joseph was the kind of person who was not going to blame the world or blame God for his misfortunes. Joseph was the kind of person who, through his misfortunes, he never stopped believing that God loved him and that God was going to carry him through to a better day. And, as we see in the lesson, there did come a better day. Joseph, by being where he was at, was able to do a whole lot of good for a lot of people, was able to restore the relationship with his family. And so everything turned out good. And had he not forgiven, been able to forgive his brothers for what they did, because what they did was pretty low down, mean thing to do. They more or less killed him without killing him. They put him where they figured he'd never, survive very long. And that was an evil, mean thing to do. But Joseph, even though they'd done that to him, was able to say, okay, they, why they done it don't matter. But they done it, and it's over with, and the world has moved on, and I want to move on. And he valued more having this relationship with his family than holding that grudge. And again, I would have hung at least a couple of them if I had the opportunity, just for me. But Joseph was able to give this grace to them the same way that he believed God had given him grace to survive all the trials that he had been through. And Joseph, he was up one day, down the next day. He would pull himself out and then something else would happen. And he'd get knocked down again, but in the long run, and I think because he believed that God was going to help him, God said, okay, I'm not going to let him down and help him. But if Joseph, I think, had not been willing to give grace and forgive other people, I don't think God would have been as proud of him as he was to help him like he did. I think that's biggest point that we can get out of this story is what the lesson says, that God gives us grace, and in return, we should give grace to others and be ready to forgive, to forget, not hold grudges, and to move on and make the best of, wherever we're at. If somebody hurts you, okay, tomorrow's a new day. You try to go on from there. You can't go back. And if you don't forgive anybody, if you hold a grudge, you're trying to live back in the past. And that never, I think, is a good way to go. Because tomorrow's coming. It's a new day. And, we always talk about the good old days, and how we wish we was back in the good old days. And sometimes I think that way too, but the good old days might have been good in our memory, but they may not have been good to a lot of people. So, every day is another day. We can let something bad that happens to us hold us back and keep pulling us down, but we're not getting anywhere like that. The world is going to keep moving on. If somebody hurts your feelings, or somebody robs you, or does something bad to you, the world ain't going to stop and wait for you to get over it. The world's going to go on. Joseph understood that, and he believed that God loved him. He believed that God wanted him to move on. And so that's what he did. He chose to do it that way. Had he not chosen to do that, he might have rotted in prison or slavery somewhere. But because of Joseph's way of looking at things, God liked this. And I think that if we can be more like Joseph, God will like it when he sees it in us too. To forgive, to move on, to be willing to extend grace when somebody makes a mistake and does harm us in some way. To just move on from it, not hold it inside because it doesn't hurt the person you're mad at. There's nothing you can do short of murder to hurt the person who did you wrong. If you're not brave enough to do that, then you can either forget it, go on, or you can hold on to it and just let it poison you from the inside. And I believe that's what holding a grudge does. And Joseph never, according to Scripture, Joseph never considered holding a grudge to anybody. He believed that it was a more important way to go through life than to do that. And I think that's a lesson for all of us in here, is be willing to give grace freely, as God gives it to us freely. That's what we believe, that's what we preach and teach, so that's what we need to live. Anybody got anything they want to add? I'm sure it's a lot of other things you can get from this story, because it's a complex story, a lot of twists and turns in it. And as anything in the Bible is not necessarily one thing you can get out of this story, and there's nothing else you can get out of it. So has anybody else got any other ideas from it they want to bring up? Or how do y'all feel? Do y'all believe God pulls the puppet strings and everything he does us, he does on purpose? Or do you believe that God lets us choose which way we're going to go and decides
if we believe in God and we have our faith and trust in him, he will be with us regardless how we go, what we do. And if we make bad choices, he's there to help us back up and redo. And I think with Joseph, I'm like you, when they showed up and wanted some food, I probably laughed at them as, ha ha ha, yeah, you come begging to me. Ha.
Yeah.
But that's not what he did, because he felt God in there wanted him to reunite with his family. And we see families today who are so divided that they really need to stop and think and come back together.
Yeah, that's true. As I get older and lose more family members, and you start to realize your life ain't gonna last forever, it becomes maybe more important to you than it used to be.
When I think I'm the only Mitchell left here, It's a rude awakening.
Yeah, it's like, you know, my brothers and sister and myself, you know, we're the oldest in our family left, and it's kind of a bad feeling in a way. But you know, like I said before, the world keeps going. We can't stop it, and it's not going to stop for us. It keeps going, and you can either go along with it, or you can ball up. You know, like Mom used to say, curl up in a ball and just lay down.
Yeah.
Yeah, give up. I can't do that, Mom.
I'm just thankful the Lord has been with me and I can be here this long.
Amen.
I hope He's going to continue. I'm not ready to go yet.
I'm not either.
I'm not getting on there to train.
No, I like being alive. I don't want to give up on none of that. But anybody else got anything you want to say? It's about 10:30. If I keep talking much longer, I'm going to have a coffee fit. So, thank y'all for coming. Once again, I hope that more people start coming back. I really wish they would. And next week, I think we go into Proverbs or something. Different kind of lesson. So, everything keeps moving along. The world ain't gonna stop. It keeps going. No, I'm gonna cut it off now. Thank you, Mama. Let's